Hey guys, this is Rebecca, and today I'll be discussing Lied der Lulu from Alban Berg's Lulu. Alban Berg studied with the well-known composer Schoenberg early in his career. This relationship was sustained from student to mentor. Berg had a deep desire to please Schoenberg and did a lot of unpaid grunt work for his teacher for the early parts of his career. Berg is known as the most acceptable of the so-called 12-note composers, not an orthodox atonalist. There's a lot of formal structure, but the emotional content is what stays with the listener. Berg uses a 12-tone method in this composition. Berg's teacher Schoenberg is credited with being the inventor of this technique. It replaces the basis of tonality and favors the idea that every note has equal importance, or to say, there is no individual note hierarchy as we would associate in tonal music. The basics of 12-tone is there is a basic order of a collection of 12 tones. This order and the notes vary from composition to composition. Now, this collection or set is not a theme or motive. It is the simple basis of which the composition is written. Each composer who utilizes this method implements it in a different way. I'll save this analysis for the piece for another screencast, but it is important to acknowledge and have a basic understanding of this. One of Berg's first and greatest accomplishments was his opera Wozzeck. It is a groundbreaking piece, musically, emotionally, and dramatically. It was known as one of the first atonal operas. Now, his opera Lulu was written later in his career, once he was an established and internationally known composer. However, the play Lulu, of which the opera is based on, was very controversial. It was even banned for a time because of obscenity. When he began working on it in 1928, the play was no longer banned, but it was still controversial. The project took him several years due to various commissions and interruptions. He used those works to experiment with new tonal ideas, some of which he integrated into Lulu. He worked from the mid-1929 to spring of 1934 on completing a short score version of the opera and then began orchestration. Berg never completed the final and third act of the opera. Some say that Schoenberg was asked to complete it, but he refused. It was almost 20 years since Berg had studied with Schoenberg, and their styles had developed very independent of each other. The piece was premiered as an unfinished work in Zurich in 1937. We know very little about the reception of the work, but it wasn't really performed again until 1949, when it was performed in Venice in Italian. The first stage performance in Germany was in March of 1953. It was completed years later by Friedrich Cerna in 1977. The completed version, 3 acts, was premiered in Paris in 1979. The story follows an intricate and complex journey of love, murder, and reputation of the main character, Lulu. Where we will pick up is in the second act. Lulu has just been handed a revolver and instructed by her husband to shoot herself in order to save his reputation. In the song, she explains how she's never tried to be anything except true to herself. At the end of the aria, she shoots her husband. Pretty heavy stuff, right? And that isn't even the end of the opera, but I'll let you look up the rest. While it is pretty crazy, the music fits right in. If we look at the text of the aria, we see that the 12-tone method works really well to display the variety of emotion that would be felt during the scene. Here is an English translation of the German text. If men have killed themselves for my sake, that doesn't lower my value. You know as well why you made me your wife, as I knew why I took you for husband. You had deceived your best friends with me. You could not well go on deceiving yourself with me. If you bring me the close of your life as a sacrifice, still you have had my whole youth for it. You understand 10 times better than I do which is the more valuable. I have never in the world wished to seem to be anything different from what I am taken for, and I have never in the world been taken for anything different from what I am. We see here that the music could greatly influence the way this text is interpreted. This first section we'll look at has a subtle build that really sets the tone for the scene. By this point in the opera, the audience is accustomed to the unsettling feeling of the 12-tone method, so we need to understand that we are looking at it out of context. I know that it will sound very striking and unsettling, but this sense is highlighted by the fact we are listening to it out of context. While I will be explaining some of my own visceral reactions to the piece, pay attention to your personal views. They may vary, and that is exactly the point. With all this in mind, we'll look at this opening sequence. It sets up the scene in the sense that the audience doesn't really know exactly where the character is going to go. Berg creates an atmosphere of uncertainty of what Lulu is about to do. She begins by singing slow, arpeggiated notes, which don't seem to fit together as we would expect. She's there, holding a gun, and this is how she starts the song. Lots of arpeggiated scales and this truncated accompaniment. We feel the tension starting to build, and an eerie calm and sophisticated sense of Lulu's approach to the situation. The texture feels spare, although she's supported with this accompaniment. The accompaniment and singer move together, almost in rhythmic unison, not exactly, but it has that feel, and therefore creating this false sense of order and security. Let's take a listen to the beginning. Pretty fun, huh? Berg does a great job text painting this next part when she says, "You have deceived your best friends with me. You could not well go on deceiving yourself with me." That starts in this section here. Notice all the quick and almost playful runs she performs when talking about deceit. That gives us insight into the character of Lulu. She comes off as almost playful, but in a dark, sinister way. We can note in the music how this edition offers two versions of these vocal melodies. One is with the expected runs, shown here, and the other one up here is like a more simplified version. This offers us insight into the complexity of the music and of this role. Let's take a listen. As we enter this next phrase, I start to feel the threat of Lulu becoming more prominent. The seemingly random 12-tone pattern begins to build, and the accompaniment under it seems to start becoming more fluid, like the current in a river. The triplets we'll start to see in the left hand, and in the last excerpt kind of are building into this effect. Then this next part, the accompaniment also becomes more convoluted. We'll start to see how the ranges are shifting. The low ranges start melding into the high, and the high come down to low. The climax of the song occurs in this section when she talks about the value of her own life, and we see her talking about those on really high notes. The way that Berg incorporates this melodic build while Lulu is talking about her life and the perspective of the value of her life, we feel her become manic and unstable. I feel that the melody offers us an insight into her mind. Is she trying to convince her husband or herself? I feel as an actor you could interpret these lines as fighting to convince yourself to stay alive. She's going mad before our eyes, and the music helps us see that she herself doesn't know how the end of the scene is going to go. Let's take a listen. This last phrase we're about to listen to is a continual descending line, which gives us a scary, false sense of security and ending, with the final measure of the accompaniment recalling the opening measures of the music. It leaves us asking the question, have we made any progress? What arch has the character made? Will Lulu shoot herself? Will she leave her husband? Then, after all this emotional journey, Lulu makes a decision. Yet, this music could suggest that Lulu herself doesn't know her own decision until the trigger has been pulled. Let's take a listen. Ultimately, this music seems strange and disconcerting, mostly due to the fact that we are listening to it out of context. The most exposure that you have in this genre, the more emotional and the form aspects of the piece are revealed. You can't deny that it does elicit some strong emotions from you, right? Well, thanks for coming along with this journey with me. Hope you enjoyed it. Look up some other pieces by Alban Berg, and I'll see you next time.